Hello, Sombre here. This is my third video on the Greenskins and the second national overview. We've talked about Black Crag. It's now time to talk about Bone Nose Tribe. So like with the other video, it has the companion video of the generic Greenskins. That's the Greenskins that are shared between the two factions. You can get all the information about them there and the information about the national mechanic of the wars and promotions and things. This video is a national overview specifically of the things that are unique and different to the Bone Nose tribe. So I will be talking about their troops. I'll be giving a quick overview of the nation and the gem income they get, talking about the troops, talking about the commanders that they have, and then talking about any multi-heroes, heroes, and summons and national spells. And then finally, I'll have a quick look at the pretenders that are available for them. This is a national overview and kind of a introduction to a nation. It's not a guide on how the nation should be played, but there are some kind of tips as I talk about various different things that we'll go over. So firstly, just to read out the summary of the nation, there is no race so pervasive, prolific, diverse, and destructive as the Greenskins. From cowardly goblins to rugged orcs and lumbering trolls, they are a bane to civilizations across the known world. The Greenskins of the south and west can call upon tribes of primitive savage orcs and spider-worshipping forest goblins to overthrow the civilizations of the world. National features. Their race is made up of sneaky goblins, poisonous forest goblins, brutish orcs, and frenzied savage orcs. They prefer Heat 1, different from Black Crag. Their military is made of hordes of infantry, swift light cavalry, hard-charging medium cavalry, and barely tamed beasts. Their magic is fire, nature, water, air, and death, and their mages may be recruited without a lab. They have strong priests, in contrast with Black Crag, they have a Holy 3 recruitable. Bosses with enough experience can upgrade to Big Boss, War Boss, and finally trigger a war, getting free troops each time, something which is common to both of the nations. And they have the same turmoil limit as as Black Crag, so they're forced into turmoil. But they also have a little bit of movement towards sloth, so less able to get production scales. Happier with sloth. And of course, they have that extra heat limit. Also, their forts are primitive, which is not a major handicap, but yeah, their forts are just worse than Black Crag's forts. Their starting gem income is 1 fire, 1 air, and 3 nature per turn, so they're much more nature focused. And yeah, now we should talk about the troops. So first troop that's unique to Black Crag, I'm actually going to start over here in the forest goblins that can be recruited in all forests. So, like the Goblin Infantry, if you recruit a Forest Goblin, you get a randomized set of weaponry and armor. And you can see those in the Bone Nose Troop variants. There's a bunch, I'm just going to put them all up on screen so you can have a look at them. So we've got, some do have javelins. I think that's the only one with javelins. Some have shields. They all kind of have light armor and typical kind of stats for, there's a stone axe, typical stats for goblins, so bad morale, not particularly good at fighting, but cheap, and there's lots of them. Another one with a shield. Another one with a shield. Lots of hide shields and things involved. Very light armor in general. A spiked club. A stone spear. Yeah, a couple with spears. Some of them just don't have shields at all as well. They'll die definitely to missile fire quite a bit quicker than the others. And there's just the one with the javelins, so you can kind of pick those ones out if you want to and do something with them, but it's just javelins. It's not that exciting. So when do you recruit forest goblins rather than recruiting goblins? They're the same cost basically. So goblins are 4 gold, 3 resources, 3 recruitment points. Forest goblins 4 gold, 1 resource, 3 recruitment points. So you can, in places where you're very resource restricted, you can get forest goblins, and then they're basically acting the same as the goblins, but you don't get the nasty skulkers that you do with the goblins, which are the really good special goblins with the 2 armor piercing attacks. You don't get those at all. You do get some with javelins, and all of the forest goblins have a little bit of invulnerability, so their protection is actually slightly better than it appears to be. That's from their kind of magical tattoos giving them a little bit of protection. Nowhere near as much as the savage orcs, but it's just a little bit. They do all have forest survival rather than mountain survival, so that can be relevant to what you're doing. But largely the differences are relatively cosmetic. and it comes down to, do you have the resources? If you have the resources, I would say go for the goblins over the forest goblins. But if you are very resource tied up, very short on resources, if you've taken sloth scales, then you could get forest goblins instead. Forest goblin archers can also be recruited in all forests. They are a bit different, where the forest goblin is very similar to the goblin archer and forest goblin archer do have a key difference. So the goblin archer is 5 gold, 3 resources, 3 recruitment points. The forest goblin is 6 gold, 2 resources, 4 recruitment points. So lower in resources, higher in gold. The reason that they're higher in gold is because they have poison bows. So if you can do damage, and they really don't do very much damage at all because of their their low strength and everything. So, and because they're basically short bows. So it's only 10 piercing damage, but if you do damage, you get to add 5 points of weak poison. So if you're able to scratch things and the battle is relatively long, the poison makes them significantly better, I would say. Don't use them against things that have high protection and lots of shields and stuff, because they're not worth it. If you just need to put out shots, for like flaming arrows, things like that, then the ordinary goblin archer is better. But the poison bow is, worth the extra point of gold if you're able to consistently hit things, and then the poison can kind of overwhelm and do significant damage. I'll come back to the cavalry when I'm talking about the. I'll talk about cavalry kind of as a block. So let's hop over now to the Savage Orc Boy. So, like the Orc Boy, the Savage Orc Boy can be recruited outside of forts. It's not terrain limited or anything. It's just outside and inside forts. Very similar to the Orc Boy in terms of cost. So Orc Boy is 875. The Savage Orc Boy is 825. So again, much lower resource cost. You can do this with sloth scales, and you can mass them very quickly. You can get very large numbers of Savage Orc Boys. Much like the Orc Boy, it has the same 2 mechanics. When it's recruited, you get a randomized weapon and armor, and when it promotes, it loses all of its experience and transforms into a random Biggin form, a Savage Orc Biggin in this case. The big difference between the Savage Orc Boys and the regular Orc Boys is you've got Berserker at 2, which is a decent value, so they get that +2 attack, they get morale, unlimited morale 99. They get an extra 2 protection. The protection is not super relevant because they actually lean on invulnerability rather than natural protection. So Savage Orc Boys have invulnerability 8. They have higher magic resistance as well because of their magical tattoos. Or magical war paint rather than tattoos. I guess tattoos and war paint are kind of the same thing to the orcs, given probably how crude they are in doing things. They probably just kind of hack you up and throw paint on you instead of a tattoo. So their natural protection's low. They have this bad armor. Their shield's not particularly great, but with the invulnerability, they end up having protection 9 against mundane attacks. So it's enough to keep them alive. It's not as much protection as you would get from the more resource expensive Orc Boys. The variants that you get from the Savage Orc Boys are as follows. There's only 3 of them. So the first one is, as we saw, a stone axe and a shield. Kind of your basic guy. The stone axe is not as good as the chopper. This is really worth bearing in mind. The regular Orc Boy's chopper is a better weapon than the stone axe. So this is 7-0 -1/1. The chopper is 7-0 -1/1. So it's the same thing as the chopper, except the chopper gets the charge bonus for the first strike, which is fairly significant difference. So they're better offensively than the Savage Orc Boy until the Savage Orc Boy goes berserk, and then they're significantly better because they get extra attack skill and extra strength. So they're hitting harder and more accurately once they've taken a bit of damage. The variants are this guy here with the stone axe and the hide shield. This guy here with a big stone spear, which is kind of an interesting weapon. It's a 2-handed spear, which is quite unusual in Dominions. It hits fairly hard. It's 18 on the attack and it's piercing, so it gets through armor fairly well. And it takes a strength buff nicely because it increases takes more of their strength into the attack when it's a 2-handed weapon. Yeah, an extra 25% of their strength. So strength buff is very nice on these guys. And they have worse defenses because they don't have the hide shield. But other than that, same invulnerability and everything. The third form of the Savage Orc Boy has got 2 weapons, which is actually kind of exciting on a cheap troop, having 2 attacks. They're not very good attacks, they're just a pair of clubs made out of bones. So we've got low damage. We do have bludgeoning, which can matter, particularly in the mod, because you've got things like your undead that have piercing resistance, long dead skeletons, things like that. And then you've also got the statues and things that are in the game, which you need bashing damage to do full damage against, because they've got resistances to slash and to pierce. So no shield, the typical levels of defense and everything, but 2 attacks. Once they go berserk, these are pretty good. These are probably the most offensively potent of the 3 once they've got those. But you've got the typical distribution of 1-handed weapon and shield, 2-handed weapon, and 2 single weapons. When do you use these rather than Orc Boys? When you're limited on resources, as with the Forest Goblins, when you want berserk, when having magic resistance matters, which it quite often does. Those are basically the use case of the Savage Orc Boy. When is the Savage Orc Boy rubbish? When you're getting attacked with lots of magical attacks, because it ignores the invulnerability. If your opponent has a lot of ranged attacks, and just things that hit not terribly hard, but lots of hits. So the stuff that is good against things with low protection is very good against them, obviously. Now they've got an Arrow Boy version as well. So comparing the two, the Orc Arrow Boy is 10, 7, 8. You get a crude longbow with precision 8. The Savage Orc one, precision 10, so they're better shots. They're happier about using the longbows. And they are 10, 3, 7. So cheaper, and in resources much cheaper. So it's much more possible to raise up a force of Savage Orc Arrow Boys than it is Orc Arrow Boys. It's more popular amongst the Savage Orcs to actually fire bows, because they're kind of hunting ways. A thing that is a drawback with the Savage Orc Arrow Boys, if you want them to be just pelting arrows out all battle long, is that because they've got Berserker, if the opponent's got some short bows or something firing at them, a bunch of them are going to go Berserk, run off, and then they kind of suck in melee, of course. They've got a 14 damage club, just a single one, and then not very good protection and everything, and they're more expensive than the boys, so you don't really want that to happen. Use them when you want to build up a ranged army. You're not the best nation at doing that, and when you're limited on resources, because they are significantly fewer resources again. Then we've got the Savage Orc Biggin. So this is what the Savage Orc Boy would turn into if he gets enough experience. It's the same as with the Orc Boy. It's 40 experience to transform. You lose all your experience when you transform, but you become a Biggin who've got better stats, better equipment and everything. Savage Orc Biggins, pretty tasty. They have the same Berserker as the Savage Orc Boy. Obviously, they're a lot more expensive. But similar to the Orc Biggin, you get the randomized equipment, so we can look at those. But before we do, let's just have a quick comparison of the two costs and everything. So it's 11 gold, 14 resources, 9 recruitment points for the Orc Biggin. So resources are kind of a limiter on that one. Only 2 resources for the Savage Orc Biggin, so you can not worry about that at all. They're a bit more expensive in gold. They have a higher invulnerability value, so they end up with the higher protection, 10 against mundane attacks, which is it's good light armor. It's not quite medium armor yet. They have the same berserk and everything as the others, but they have decent magic resistance, decent morale, and all of the stats you expect from a Biggin. The forms that you get from them are only 2, unlike it's a bit different from the Biggins, or I think you get 3. I think with the Biggins you get you get 1 with a sword and shield, 1 with 2 swords, and 1 with a 2-handed weapon. Whereas with the Savage Orcs, it's only 2 variant, which is, I guess, a bit easier to use. You've got 1 that has a 2-handed weapon, which is the Big Stone Axe. The Big Stone Axe is not a chopper, so it doesn't get a charge bonus, but boy, does it hit hard. 24 damage. Once you go Berserk, obviously, it goes up to 26 and is at 13 attack, so pretty accurate. So once they're Berserking, they can really whack into some stuff with high protection, full plate armor, that sort of thing. And then your other one is the classic 1-handed weapon and shield. It's not a hide shield, which is nice, although it's just a regular one, not a kite shield or anything. And then it's a stone axe, so not a chopper again, but you're still doing good damage and obviously benefit from berserk and so forth. I would say that I'm much more interested usually in getting the big stone axe ones, but that extra bit of defense and survivability can be very useful. It just falls away once you go berserk. That's one of the things. Shields are not great once you go berserk because your defense drops. before I talk about the cavalry, let's talk about your sacred that you get. And this really is a defining feature of the nation. So where Black Crag gets the Loon Boys, the Night Goblin Sacreds, that they are cheap, but they're not terribly effective. You don't really want to put a very big bless on them. The Savage Orcs get any fort, so you not limited by your capital, Warboy. And the Warboy is a pretty good and very cheap sacred bless chassis. 16 gold is cheap for a sacred, and these are good stats. It's basically like a biggin, but with two attacks. So you can think of it as like a third type of biggin. You've got the one with the two-hander, the one with the one-hander and the shield, and then you've got this guy with the two-handers, the two one-handers rather. No charge bonus, they're just stone axes, but 20 damage out of the gate, and then it has Berserker 3 rather than 2, so we're going up to 23 damage, and they're coming out at 14 attack, which is very nice. The Warboys have good magic resistance. They have okay morale. They've got 16 hit points, which is, I believe, more than the Biggins. Is that right? It's the same as they're basically Biggin chassis. And then they got that high strength 13. I think that is the same. Yep. So 13. They don't really cost very much in terms of resources, and they're not much more expensive in gold. So if you have the holy points available rather than getting Biggins, you should get Savage Orc Warboys, and they can be worth a fairly substantial bless because you can get multiple forts up cranking these out and just get a very, very large number of them. You're not really going to end up limit. You can get them in places where you don't have very many resources because that's not really a limit. Recruitment points may be a bit of a limit, but they're just not very expensive in terms of gold. Their invulnerability rating is a bit higher. It's a vulnerability 11, so they end up with 12 protection against mundane attacks. Again, it's kind of like light medium armor. It's on the cusp. It's not very heavy. You could give them something to make them a bit more survivable, but because they go berserk and they have not very good defense skill, in melee they're always going to be a bit vulnerable. They just can be absolute blenders because of their ability to hit hard, often accurately once they go berserk. So yeah, pretty useful all round, but they're not super elite sacreds. They just can benefit from a good bless. They're very cheap, and you can have loads of them. Now then, before we talk about monsters, let's talk about cavalry. So I skipped past, but we'll now go back to the Forest Goblin Cavalry. So the Spider Riders can be recruited in all forests. There are two types of them you can recruit. There's the ones with the bows, which come with poison bows, just like the archers. They have mobile archer, so they can shoot as they run around. They also don't have just a dagger or something. They have a stone spear, so they can do okay in melee. Not great, but okay. And then the spider that they ride has venomous fangs, which is very low damage, but if you do manage to hit strong poison rather than weak, 15 rather than 5 on the weak poison you get from the poison bow, isn't it? Yeah, so if you do manage to bite, quite a lot of poison damage. And forest spiders don't have the best stats, but they can web things. And these webs are ones that they do in close range. Magic resistance works against it. It can be negated by being large or strong. So a lot of things can negate these webs. It's not like a net, but you do get to attack out with them multiple times. They have a fatigue cost, but I believe you get multiple uses out of them. Yes, the spider just gets tired, but he gets to try and web things multiple times. So things that don't have the best magic resistance and aren't the biggest and strongest can end up and don't have. Because you also need to hit them, I think. Yes, and don't have a huge amount of defense. So think of like Olmish Blackplate infantry, right? They don't have very good defense. They rely on their protection. They have not very good magic resistance, so you will web them, and then they'll end up skipping a turn because they'll have to break through it. So they can be useful for tying stuff up. It can help them overwhelm and kill things and get some bites in, because taking away all the defense abilities of a unit means you can just test against their protection constantly and maybe get some poison into them. But the spiders themselves are fragile. They've only got 9 hit points. They're only little. This is cavalry, but it's only size 3. So similar to the Wolf Riders. But the Wolf Riders, I would say the Wolves are a bit more capable in close combat. They do have a little bit of protection, but they don't have any barding or anything. The thing that the Spider Riders really have going for them is that they cost virtually no resources, and they're cheap. It's only 18 gold. If we look at the Wolf Rider with the bow, it's 15 gold, so It is cheaper, but much more in resources. And is it recruitment points are the same? Are they 15 each? No, it's slightly lower in recruitment points. So it's a bit more gold, but you end up with poison bow, and the web ability can be really useful. But kind of unreliable, like cavalry, I would say, missile cavalry. They do get a siege bonus, which is kind of useful because the spiders can just run up and down the walls, basically. They have all the usual things the goblins have, including stealthy. They have a little bit more invulnerability than some of the other goblins. I think the other ones have 3, these have 4, so you end up with a bit more protection against mundane attacks, but it's still not good. They're very, very fragile and prone to dying. I'm not a huge fan of the spider riders with the bows, but you can you don't have to use them like missile cavalry. You can just, because they have spears and they have mobile archer, you can just let them do like flank attacks and they can just shoot incidentally with their poison bows. The other Spider Rider does have a lance, so he gets to hit a bit harder on that first strike, and he's got a bit more protection going on. He's got a little bit more armor. His spider is the same spider. So again, unreliable like cavalry. You can do some flanking and things with them. They can be useful for getting siege bonus, I guess. Bit of everything. And you can recruit them in all forests, so you have the opportunity to get a bunch of them if you want. I think really the thing that's kind of exciting about them is the spider can web and can bite and do that extra poison damage. The other cavalry that's available to Bone Nose, we have the Savage Orc Boar Boy. So this is the equivalent of the Orc Boar Boy. So let's look at the cost: 25, 18, 20. And the Savage Orc Boar Boy is 25, 4, 17. So if you're limited by resources or even recruitment points, they are cheaper. You can mass them more easily. They have Berserk, but you can't go Berserk while riding a mount. It does matter if the mount is killed, that you can then go Berserk and fight on the ground, but they don't really get the advantage of being Berserk, so that's something to bear in mind with them. But because they don't get that advantage, I've also given them just, I believe, better attack skill. Yeah, so attack skill 10 here, but because these guys can't Berserk when they're on the back, I've just artificially raised their attack skill to represent that they're kind of trying to frenzy and be more aggressive while they're on the back of the boar. They obviously don't have as good protection as the boar boys. They don't hit quite as hard. Stonelight Lance is 13. Yeah, Chopper is 18. They both have the charge bonus, so they hit less hard, bit less protection, less able to kind of stand in combat. But the boar is pretty good. The boar comes with a non-ability 10, ends up with 10 versus mundane. Is that less than this? It's a bit better than the ordinary war boar, and you get higher magic resistance as well. So it's got magic resistance 7 versus the woeful magic resistance 5, so it's a bit better. And of course the rider's got more magic resistance. And yeah, they're just cheaper, easier to mass them. They're better flankers than Orc Boar Boys. They are worse, kind of shock cavalry, worse at holding and grinding in melee. But I would say better flankers because they're cheaper. You can get more of them. I think their combat speed's a little higher, or is it the same? It's 18. Yeah, their combat speed's the same. But yeah, you can just get more of them because of the lower resource cost. Now, in the Black Crag video, I hadn't implemented this mechanic, but said I would. I have now implemented it, so it'll be in the next version of the mod, which is that now, when Boar Boys are promoted, they become Savage Orc Boar. Biggun versions of them. Before, they didn't have the promotion mechanic. It takes 45 experience, so it takes quite a lot, but you become a Biggun and you lose all your XP. The Savage Boar Boy Biggun is kind of in a different category because you're now getting quite fancy boars that they ride on because the Savage Orcs specialize in really good boars. So if we look at the Orc Boar Boy Biggun, we've got 35 gold, 26 resources, 30 recruitment points. That's quite high, the recruitment points. If you look at the Savage Orc, it's 44, 26. So an increase in gold cost, and you'll see why, but much lower resource cost, and recruitment points are lower as well. So again, sloth, scales, certain provinces, it's easier to get these guys. They have 2 attacks rather than an attack and shield, which is actually kind of neat. They don't have the charge bonus, so these are not shock charge cavalry, although the boars do have a charge bonus. And hulking savage boars are actually pretty great. 11 attack skill, strength 17. I believe if we compare those, these are 10 attack skill, strength 16. Yeah, so you're getting a better quality of boar, and they've got pretty good. They've got the extra magic resistance, and they've got pretty good protection. It's 10. Not as good as this. No, so they have the lighter protection on their mounts than the regular boar boy, but they got better offensive stats on the boar, and you get 2 attacks out of this. So you end up with a lot of attacks coming out of this. Each of these is 3. You can fit 2 of them to a square, so it's 6 attacks per square, which is pretty great. All the usual stuff I said applies, about the berserker not applying when they're riding on their mount and so on. They also have more skilled rider, so they increase the morale of their mounts more. They've got 2, whereas the Orc Boar Boy Big only has 1, so you end up with better morale on the mount and a little bit better defense. Defense 12 versus, is it 10 on this one? Yeah, defense 10. So maybe more survivable in melee, even though they've got lower protection. Not sure. But yeah, more offensive output than the Orc Boar Boy Big, but a bit more fragile, perhaps. So what is left to talk about? It is the special troll that you get for this nation and the giant. So rather than getting stone trolls, you get river trolls. River trolls can be recruited in any swamp. So the stone trolls can be recruited in any highlands or mountain, like border mountain terrain. That is easier to do than getting river trolls. Swamps are a bit harder to come by and tend to be worse provinces for the purposes of hiring things. But they're not expensive in resources, river trolls. They don't require that many recruitment points. You can't see, but because the limited recruitment things here, but they are limited to 3 per month, same as stone trolls. If we compare them with the common troll, he is 41. You can have 4 per turn. This is 45 too, and you can have 3 per turn. So the river troll is a bit more expensive version out of the 2 of them. The river troll has a couple of nice benefits going for it. Swimming is a good ability to have for crossing rivers, obviously, and a few other things it can do. They have Slimer. So I believe this is the standard value for Slimer. So it's a check against magic resistance without any modifiers, I think. But if you get slimed, then you get a reduction to attack and defense skill just from attacking these guys. Slime is actually quite a strong ability. It's quite underrated, so they can end up being quite effective. The stats of their opponent dropping as they attack them. The river troll itself has the same things that a troll typically has. It hits incredibly hard. It has multiple attacks. So here we've got the big stone axe, which is 2-handed, which is distinct from. Yeah, the great club is also 2-handed, but it does a bit more damage than the great club. You've got more hit points. It's 37 hit points, 18 strength versus. Oh no, it is 37 hit 18. So they have the same hit points and everything. You're really just getting the extra Slimer ability, the swimming, and I think there's something else that they get going for them. We've got swamp survival, obviously. Is it the recuperation? No, they have recuperation as well. What is it that they get extra? They have more attack skill. They've got 11 instead of 10. So yeah, extra attack skill is basically the main difference. Their magic resistance isn't great, unlike the stone troll. They don't get the extra magic resistance. And yeah, same protection and everything. So it's really just the Slimer and the extra attack skill. I think river trolls are neat because you can get them from swamps. I just get them whenever I get a swamp. I just get some river trolls and use them, and I've been kind of pleasantly surprised by them. Although all of the commentary I always have whenever you get troll units is just they don't really have enough protection, and the fact they're undisciplined and they're big means that they tend to get attacked a lot, and they just quickly get chopped up, so they don't get to use their regeneration. So anything that you can do to buff them a bit to make them more survivable, be careful with their scripting and so on, so that they can survive for a few rounds. They've got this amazing output of attacks, and they've got the regen going for them. Like if their protection's buffed up or they're ethereal or whatever, they can be really good. Your giant is got some things that make it better than the Black Crag giant. I believe the protection overall is lower. It does have invulnerability 12. I think the Black Crag giant maybe has a bit more protection. The thing that it's really got going for it is that it's got the better magic resistance. I think the Black Crag one is 10 and this is 13 because of the magical war paint. It's very similar otherwise, though. There's really not that much of a difference between the two of them. As usual, yeah, you get the full graphic. If you're not on the recruitment screen, this is just to make it smaller for the recruitment screen, and you can only get one of them per month, and they're very expensive, 180 gold. But they're only 13 resources, so again, you're not very resource limited. Typical commentary for giant supplies, they can absolutely obliterate things. They're kind of unreliable. They can even hit and kill themselves sometimes. But pretty potent, pretty scary thing to be able to mix in with your forces. And having recruitable fear is always very exciting, even if it is 180 gold. I think that's all for the troops then. Alright, let's talk about Bone Nose's commanders. So starting off, we've got the Forest Goblin boss. You can recruit these from any forest. I believe it doesn't have to be a fort. Is it outside Fort Forests? I think it might be outside Fort Forests as well. So very similar to the Goblin boss. They've got Forest Survival rather than Mountain Survival, and when they promote into different things and get different troops. If we have a quick look at the southern boss upgrades, you can see there's the goblin ones. The forest goblins turn to Forest Goblin Big Boss, who is riding a forest spider, which gives him pretty decent map move, which is nice. Other than that, same as the Goblin Big Boss. I won't say too much about these because they're very similar. Gets a bit of poison resistance. When you get to be a war boss, you get a much bigger spider, the gigantic forest spider, which is also a creature they can summon. More hit points. The protection's not that high, so it could do with some barding. But if you put barding on it, that built-in protection scales really well with barding. Has a bit of siege bonus because you can just climb up the walls, obviously. And other than that, yeah, very similar to the Goblin War Boss, but just not on a chariot. And starts spreading chaos, of course. And then he'll eventually promote to the War Boss, all the usual things that the War Boss has. So he's sacred. He comes with a item which automatically casts 2 area effect 3 spells that grant poison resistance and envenom arrows each round of battle. So very nice with your archers to add some extra poison to the bow shots. You can use those with regular goblin archers as well, which is nice. And having the poison resistance cast every single round of battle is actually kind of great as well. It's very effective. So that is your Forest Goblin boss. The cost 35 gold for a normal Goblin boss, 35 gold for a Forest Goblin boss. He's got a little bit of invulnerability, but much lower protection. But it's pretty low invulnerability, pretty rubbish if you compare him. We've got more protection on the Goblin boss. Then we've got the Savage Orc boss. So Savage Orc boss comes with invulnerability 11. You can see his protection against mundane attacks is not too bad because he's got a bone helmet and bone cuirass, both of which are actually fairly decent armor. Like the Orc boss, it's 2 weapons for him, but they're not choppers. You get the inferior stone weapons that the Savage Orcs have. He can go Berserk and has Berserker 3. And other than that, basically the same as the Orc boss. Same promotion mechanics as the Orc boss, but of course he's getting promoted up the Savage Orc line instead. So when you're getting your troops from your promotions, they're more kind of like Savage Orcs, Forest Goblins, things like that. Or that kind of theme. And he gets promoted. First promotion he gets, he goes up into a boar, same as the Orc boss. But the boar is a bit better. It's a hulking savage war boar. It's got that extra invulnerability. He has high berserk, as the others do. Or he can't use it when he's mounted, but if he gets unmounted, of course, the berserk's useful. And yeah, just all of the very standard things that the Orc Big Boss has. His invulnerability scores go up from 11 to 13, making him not too bad against mundane attacks at all, really. When he gets promoted, he promotes up to, gets the promotion event, promotes up to the Savage Orc War Boss. So we've got higher level of vulnerability. So we're now looking at, very high magic resistance as well because they're Savage Orcs. Very good protection against mundane attacks. Again, Berserker, 2 weapons. And riding a hulking savage war boar. I think this is the same. If we look 26, yeah, I think he gets basically the same boar. That doesn't get upgraded. And then finally you get the War Boss. And the Savage Orc War Boss has all the standard things that you expect, but also his spell casts 2 area effect 3 berserking spells each round in battle, which is a pretty strong effect and can be very useful for sending things that are not normally able to go berserk, such as putting berserk on trolls can be quite good. Putting berserk on, big uns, boar boy big uns, regular orcs that got a bit more armor. That can be a useful thing to do. And you can also use it to berserk kind of crummy stuff, because he'll just keep doing it throughout the entire battle. He can be used to kind of berserk goblins and things just to increase their morale and make them better as chaff. There's a lot of stuff you can do with that berserk ability. Moving on to the mages, we get our first tilly little mage here. So the Goblin Shaman was 80 gold, 1 path. Research ability was 5. The Forest Goblin Shaman has a little bit better research, and instead of being 1 path, he's 2. So you get 1 nature, and then you get one of these other paths. So not particularly, just like the Goblin Shaman, not really kind of a battle mage or anything, but he does have 2 paths, can do some sight searching, has a bit more versatility to him, and he's only 20 gold additional. Recruitment doesn't require a lab, of course. So you would use him in similar situations to when you would be using the Goblin Shaman. You can't get these in any forest. You do have to have a fort to get them, but they're always available in every fort. So hopping on past the Orc Shaman and the Goblin Great Shaman, we have the Savage Orc Shaman, and this is kind of where you see the step up in magic. Bone Nose is a little bit magically stronger than Black Crag. Maybe a little bit worse in terms of troops, but magically stronger. The Savage Orc Shaman comes with 1 fire, 1 air, 2 nature guaranteed, which is very nice, 2 holy. They have a stronger priest. He's, of course, also an elegist. And then you have a chance of getting fire 2, air 2, and then you can get water or earth as well. So you've got a good chance here, so 50% chance of getting 2 in 2 paths, so 2 nature and then 2 of something else. And having access to air 2 is really nice. Obviously, nature 2 is useful on having on the mages in general. They are insane. Insane 3 compared with the Orc Shaman, which is insane 5. So they're slightly less insane, the Savage Orcs, because they're a bit more in touch with their spiritual nature, let's say. It's 260 gold, so compared with the Orc Shaman, fairly significant increase. You're partly paying for the priest levels, but definitely worth getting, and probably usually worth getting over the Orc Shaman because he's, 2 in 1 path. He always has 2 in 1 path. The Savage Orc Shaman, 2 in nature. It's possible that he should cost more. I'm going to have to review these costs slightly because it does seem like it would be a bit of a no-brainer to always get the Savage Orc Shaman. You are more likely to get fire too if you want that with the Orc Shaman. So there is a difference there. But yeah. His research ability is 9 compared with the Orcs 9, so yeah, Savage Orcs don't really like researching. Then we've got the Forest Goblin Great Shaman. He can be recruited in the capital, and he can also be recruited in any forest fort you have. So there's definitely going to be fewer places able to recruit Forest Goblin Great Shamans than there would able to recruit Forest Goblin Shamans. Not in every fort, just the ones you haven't have in forest and the capital. Forest Goblin Great Shaman is 270 gold. He comes in a spider, which is actually kind of cool, because having high map move is really quite useful on a mage like this. He is a bit insane at 4, and he has Elegist and Reinvigoration 2, because he's a Great Shaman. 2 Holy, 2 Nature, so very similar to the Savage Orc Shaman at that point. Comes with 1 Death and 1 Air, and then has randoms in Fire, Air, Death, Nature, and Water. So he can get to Nature 3, which is quite exciting. To be able to get that on a 270 gold mage, pretty good. He can get to Air 2, which is nice. Those are useful. He can get to Death 2, also very useful. If you get the Water or Fire, less so, but having Nature and Water together is nice. You can cast Moss Body with that. You can also get that over there on the Savage Orc Shaman. So yeah, definitely worth recruiting these. 270 gold. Their body is puny and will die to various things, but they can be very useful. And then finally we get the Pièce de Resistance, your capital only and slow to recruit mage, which is competing, of course, with the Orc Great Shaman. So the Orc Great Shaman, just to remind you, could get 3 in Fire and 2 in Death, but nothing else. Everything else was locked at 2, Nature, and so on, and cost 300 gold. The Savage Orc Great Shaman is 395 gold, so a significant increase, but he does have a Savage Warboar that he rides around. It makes him more survivable. He could potentially do some thugging, although he's probably a bit expensive to be doing that with, and he has 22 map move, useful for getting around the map. He is somewhat insane at 6, which is less than the 9 that the Orc Great Shaman has. Has Berserker, which can be a problem if he takes like a little bit of damage. He can go Berserk and charge off and get himself killed, so watch out for that. Priest level 3, which is very exciting. You can do Divine Blessing, of course. You can do Smites early on, and you can claim Thrones, which is very nice, especially on something that's got good map move. And he comes with Nature 3, Air 1, Fire 1, and then he has 2 randoms. Now his randoms are Fire, Air, Water, so you can get Fire 2 and Air 2. You know, 2/3 of the time you get one of those at 2. Sometimes you will get that Water, and then he has Earth and Death. The Earth and Death, kind of irrelevant. If you have the Earth one, it helps him to stay alive, so it's the better path to get out of them. But having a bit of Death is, you know, not the worst thing in the world. But fundamentally, you get a guaranteed 3 nature and a guaranteed priest level 3, which is pretty good on a mage. Cap only mage, definitely worth recruiting some of these guys. And just having access to a holy 3 is pretty exciting. So that's your recruitable commanders. We'll take a quick look at the luck-based multi-heroes you get. So you get the same as the generic greenskin ones, the Orc Great Shaman and the Orc War Boss. I should probably add to this actually that you get the Savage Orc Great Shaman. I'll do that for the next version of the mod. I'll add the Savage Orc Great Shaman as a multi-hero because that's something I generally do is give you your top tier mage as a multi-hero as well. But obviously you'd rather have the Orc Great Shaman on the Wyvern. But yeah, I'll put him in there too. And then your luck independent unique heroes who can turn up. So you've got Grom, the Paunch of Misty Mountain. Now Grom is got a couple of things going for him uniquely amongst goblins. He's very, very tough for a goblin. He has built-in regeneration, and the regeneration is very high. He has very strong regeneration at 30%. If you boost that up even more and boost his protection up and everything, he can be really hard to kill. He also has a crazy powerful melee weapon, Elf Biter. Elf Biter gets 2 attacks. It has 14 damage built in and attack 3. So he's hitting for 32 damage because he's so strong with this 2-handed axe, and he's hitting twice a turn. So he can absolutely just obliterate stuff with Elf Biter straight off the bat. He comes with Goblin Chariot here, pulled by some wolves, which can let him do some trampling and things, but can be a bit of a liability. It's got low protection. Stick some barding on there to try and sort that out. And keep that going. But yeah, there's Grom. You may not want to get his mount back, maybe if it falls off, but it does allow him to have a very high map move, the fact that he's on a chariot. Of course, he can do a war like any of the unique heroes can. Then we have the Great Green Prophet. So not a war boss, can't do a war, but a very powerful mage and priest. So he has got Dominion Spreader. He is always blessed. He's like a prophet in that sense. He's got priest level 4, as if you had prophetized a Savage Orc Great Shaman. And he comes with excellent magic. He's got 2 fire, 3 air, so that's more air access than you would usually get. 2 earth, more earth access than you would usually get. And then 3 nature, which of course you've got access to 3 nature, but it's always nice to have more of them. He has Fortune Teller 10. He's got very high reinvigoration, so he can stay up in battles. And he's a berserker like all the other Savage Orcs, so he can run off and go mad. He comes with an item, the Baleful Mask. So the Baleful Mask casts Mind Burn every single round of battle, which is just quite nice. And other than that, it's just kind of a hat. You can't replace it, so you may want to put some other kind of protection on his body or something else to keep him protected. But he can do the earth buffs to keep himself going too. He should probably have like a loincloth type armor, some rags or something in his armor. I'm gonna actually go and add that right now. Okay, so I've just gone and added some basic rags to it. Doesn't really make much difference, but it's just a consistency thing. It's the same thing that various Savage Orcs have. Grokogorax, similar situation. Let me just check this. Have I gone mad, or do these guys wear? They wear furs, and the basic Savage Orcs wear wheat rolls, bone. Yeah, rags. Okay, so Grokka should also get some rags. We'll do that. Yeah, so he'll have some rags that he wears. So Grokka is very much just the embodiment of a wild Savage Orc. He's massive, he hits things with 2 stone axes, he has a very high berserker value. He doesn't wear body armor, you're not allowed to give him body armor, but you can give him some other bits to keep him alive, maybe some stone boots or something. He has pretty high invulnerability rating of 16, and he has good natural protection, and of course goes berserk and gets tougher. So if you can get some extra protection on him, he can do some stuff. You can get some buffs and things on him. But fundamentally, he is a bit vulnerable because he's just a big mad orc. He can cast, he can trigger a war like the other unique war boss heroes. And obviously he just hits like a truck. He's got good stats and hits for 2 lots of 26 damage. But he's one of the kind of lesser and less exciting heroes, I would say. He is... Shaman's always said the Grokka. Yeah, okay. So once he gets to be sacred. Before then, he isn't sacred. He's still waiting for the shamans to decide that he's sacred. And finally, we get Snaggler Grobspit. He is a Forest Goblin war boss. He comes with a couple of cool weapons. He's got Fang Spike, which is his melee weapon. It's magic and does paralyzing poison. He's got the Sting of Snaggler, which is his javelin. He has 4 of those. It does death poison when it hits, which is very mean, and is armor piercing at 3 damage. So he's very good at killing things with the Sting of Snaggler. He's riding on a gigantic forest spider, same as the other Forest Goblin war bosses. He can start a war, of course. But the thing that's really interesting about Snaggler is that each month you get a Death Creeper Spider Rider joining. So he automatically generates troops. It's worth keeping around for that reason. And the Death Creepers are like this. So a Death Creeper is basically just an upgraded Spider Rider. The Death Spiders have both the Web Spit and the Poison Spit, rather than having one or the other of the other spiders in the mod. They got okay stats. You get a few of them. When he arrives, the event that spawns him spawns a few of them as well, and he replenishes them over time. That's all of your heroes, so let's talk about your summons. So firstly, we have River Trolls. We've already looked at those, but you have a spell to cast them. For 5 nature gems, you get 2 of them, and it's very early on. I'm going to have maybe a review of the cost of that, because I think 5 gems for 2 River Trolls, even if it is early on, is just not very interesting. So maybe I'll lower that cost a little bit, I think. Yeah, so I've just gone into the mod and for the next version, just knocked that down by 1 gem. I haven't really given it a lot of thought, but it seems a bit high to me. So we'll see if 4 gems makes a bit more sense for 2 River Trolls. We've looked at those troops. Then we have Cluster of Forest Spiders at level 1. This is 10 nature gems, and you get 18 plus. So it's only nature 1 to cast. So if you get a high level nature cast, you get a lot of these guys. I believe it is an extra 2 for every level the caster is. So if you cast it with a level 3 guy, then you would get 22 Forest Spiders, which is, a decent increase, but nothing that exciting. It can only be cast by Forest Goblin Shamans and Forest Goblin Great Shamans, because it's really a Forest Goblin thing, and you get undisciplined Forest Spider troops, so let's look at them. So here's the Summons Preview site. This is the Forest Spider. Forest Spider has venomous fangs and lesser web. It's the same thing that the Forest Goblin Spider Riders are riding around. So useful because of the web attack. It is magic resistance negates, and you can negate it by being large or strong. But still, a web attack can be very useful. It has multiple shots because it's a fatigue-based thing. It is melee only, and these guys are undisciplined, but you can certainly use them to kind of slow stuff down with those webs and overcome them. Their bite actually has a strong poison, so if you do manage to get some bites in, and they don't have to work, 10 attack skill, 12 damage, it's hard for them to bite stuff, but if they do get a bit of damage in, the strong poison can kill things that are quite expensive. So skipping over Sounder of Feral Boars, because that's available to all the Greenskin nations, we have Cluster of Spitting Spiders. So same as Forest Spiders, it's 10 nature gems, but here you need 2 nature to cast it. It can only be cast by Forest Goblin Shamans or Forest Goblin Great Shamans. So realistically only Forest Goblin Great Shamans, because the Forest Goblin Shaman does not have enough nature to cast it. You get 20 plus. It's the same thing, you get 2 for every extra level. So basically you get the same number, but they are undisciplined spitting spiders instead of forest spiders. So let's take a look at them. Here is the spitting spider. So the spitting spider is very similar to the forest spider. It has the venomous fangs that the forest spider has same kind of levels of protection and stealth and everything. Very, very similar. It's slightly different color, and it has a web spit and a poison spit. So instead of running up and biting in close combat and inflicting a web that way, instead has the web spit. The web spit can't be stopped by magic resistance. It's only being large or strong does it. It has an area effect of 1 and a range of 8. It does cost fatigue, but the web spit is actually really effective. Spitting spiders surprisingly good at just webbing everything, and significantly better, I would say, in general than the forest spiders. I might make it so that they're maybe have like a little bit worse morale or protection or something. I'm not sure, because at the moment they're just better, basically. But of course they are undisciplined, and maybe you don't want a bunch of undisciplined spiders spraying the battlefield with web and poison. The poison spit is armor negating. It's 10 magical poison damage, range of strength, and 5 ammunition. So they'll spit a bunch of poison, they'll run out, and they'll keep doing that until they're tired, the web spits. But yeah, it can be very effective. It is completely armor negating. If you get splashed with the poison, you get splashed with the poison. So having a bunch of these guys can be useful if people don't bring poison resistance. They can end up being webbed and poisoned to death. It could deal with some quite tough stuff. Next unique summon for Bone Nose is at Conjuration 4. It's 2 nature, 1 air, and it's the Gigantic Forest Spider. So it can only be cast by Forest Golden Great Shamans realistically. And you get a single Gigantic Forest Spider. It costs 5 nature gems. The Gigantic Forest Spider is pretty big and tough. Is it worth 5 nature gems? Not sure. I kind of like some feedback on these summons and things as to whether they're worth it. But if you compare it with the Chithoronic Lion, for instance, that's also 5 gems. So it's kind of in that bracket of thing. So let's take a look at that. Here he is, Gigantic Forest Spider. So you get some protection, not particularly high protection, 10, so not very tanky. He is fast, high combat speed. He has 45 hit points. And then you get a web attack in close range that can be negated by large or strong beings, but can't be negated by magic resistance. And then you get Spider Claw, which is just a 16 damage attack, and then Venomous Fangs with Death Poison. Very scary to have Death Poison availability, but not terribly powerful and kind of low stats. I would say that the Gigantic Forest Spider is probably not as good as like a Chithoronic Lion, so maybe I'll just drop down because national summons are supposed to be better. I think I'll just drop down his cost a bit, put him down to I don't know, 4 gems is fine. So I'll just do that now. So I've just reduced that down to 4 gems, and I'm reducing down the cluster of forest spiders from 10 gems to 9 gems, just shaving off some gems because they look a bit anemic, a bit underpowered, those summons. So if I do that, hopefully it just entices people to try them out a little bit more because they're a bit cheaper. Okay, that is everything for your troops, your commanders, recruitables, heroes, and your summons. I've already talked about the mechanics, the war mechanic, which is present for this nation in the generic Greenskins video, so definitely go and look at that to check out how that mechanic works. So the only thing left to do for Bone Nose Tribe is to just look at the pretender selection available to them. I won't go through this in any detail. Again, this is just a kind of a little intro to the nation. It's not telling you how to play it. It's not a guide on how to play it, but you can see they really favour monsters and things. A very popular one is the Thrice-Horned Boar, which is a good one. It's being used in by the Bone Nose player currently playing in our big Warhammer game with all the nations in it. But you've got lots of other monsters available to you, big things. You've got the Bakamoto Kunshu and various other things that Black Crag also had. You've got some things that Black Crag didn't have. You've got the Colossal Head and various stuff. So yeah, selection of big fatties basically available for Bone Nose. Right, that's everything I wanted to say about the nation, I believe, for this guide. So I will see you in the next video. I hope this has been useful and piqued your interest in Bone Nose. I think they're a really cool nation. And if you have any feedback to give me, do let me know. Discord is the best place to find me. But you can tell me in the comments of the YouTube videos as well. Bye for now.